All right, everybody, welcome to episode 39 of the Fantasy Timeline, a proud member of the Dynasty Addicts Podcast Network. Here with my main man, Bill. Bill, how you doing?
Doing good. Excited. I hear there are actually players throwing footballs and some of them even being caught. It's exciting time. We're still waiting to see who's actually going to play this season. I think everything we'll know by 4 p.m. tomorrow. But yeah, football is back for the moment. How are
you? I'm doing good, man. Football is back. Had a little computer-related issue, which caused us to be a few minutes late. But besides that, man, football is here. We're talking about new faces and new places. We're talking about who's in and who's out. So I'm happy. But if you guys are watching us on the YouTube live stream here, or on Periscope, I almost forgot about Periscope. You see a very good-looking and knowledgeable man with us. We have Mitch Sorenson from the Dynasty Theory podcast. How you doing, Mitch?
Good. Thanks for having me on, guys. Have a couple beers ready to go. And I love the show. It's one of my favorite ones to listen to. I don't listen to a lot of the, NFL break everything down. So when I want news, this is the show I listen to every single week to break down the timeline.
Well, I mean that's a true honor because you and JB and Dan, you guys are killing it on Dynasty Theory. One of my favorites. I actually am subscribed to your YouTube channel because I actually love watching it more than I love listening to it. So, it's very appreciative that you enjoy listening to us as well. So now that we have the pleasantries here, we're getting into the news. So new faces and new places. We have LaShawn McCoy to the Buccaneers. We have Jordan Reed to the Niners. R.I.P. George Kittle. We have Jeremy Hill to the Las Vegas Raiders. R.I.P. Josh Jacobs. But all joking aside, are you interested in any of these guys from a dynasty point of view?
So Jeremy Hill was already cut today. That's how long he was there. He was cut 5 hours ago, I think. But yeah, none of these guys, I think, are going to be fantasy relevant at all. Jordan Reed has the little bit there, right? If he can just stay healthy, he has the talent. If they could go in that 12 personnel because they don't have a lot of good wide receivers right now with Debo being hurt, I mean, that could be a very, very good defense. So if Jordan Reed is on my teams already, I'm happy to have him. But LaShawn McCoy, he had one snap after week 13 of last year. He doesn't play special teams. Arian said, his quote today when he was talking about Ronald Jones is the backups are going to have to play special teams. So we might see, McCoy not active for a lot of games this year.
What about you, Bill?
Yeah, I mean, I added Reed in a few, just where I had other guys that had come up for the COVID. So I just did drop ads adding him, for just something cheap to see what happens. But I'm sure he'll be a cut once I have to do roster cuts before the season. And McCoy, it's the same thing. It's kind of one of those things. It's like, okay, hold on to him and see what happens. But I agree with Mitch to the point where, best case scenario is he's like that guy that needs when they need a running back to run a really good route. That's really the only time. He's not going to be a guy that's out there a lot. Kind of not comparison, but kind of like Jake, was it McKissick, his role, just that guy that's just going to go out there and every so often catch some passes. And I just don't think he's that much. He doesn't have the burst he needs as a real running back anymore.
Yeah, I don't think any of these three guys, I mean, especially now Jeremy Hill, since he's not even on the team. But speaking more about Reed and McCoy, I think they're, if they are hanging out on your waiver wire, pick them up as a lottery ticket and see if something happens. I personally think that McCoy might end up going the Carlos Hyde route this year when he was on the Chiefs last year, and everyone thought that he was going to be the main backup to Damian Williams, and it was set in stone. Then he gets cut. And then who comes in? Shady McCoy. And I have a feeling that once roster cuts come around, maybe Devonta Freeman is still hanging out and they decide they want to pick him up. He gets cut, maybe he ends up somewhere else and he does a little bit of damage. But yeah, I'm not feeling any of these guys. But, I'm sure, especially with, as you were saying, Bill, the opt-out period ends at 4 p.m. tomorrow. So who knows who else may opt out. And if he does get cut, he could end up somewhere else filling a role. But now we go from new faces and new faces to kind of the same old face doing the same old thing. So Bill holding up his Lions Christmas sweatshirt there.
That's a sweet sweatshirt. I want one.
Hell yeah. I actually might ship it to you. It's a little snug for this fella. So
works for me.
Right.
I'll take it.
So we got some kind of clarification on AB. He's going to be suspended at least 8 games. It seems like there's a second investigation that's still ongoing by the NFL, so that number could rise. Bill and I, we've talked about AB in the past. What we would do to get, what we would give up to try to get him, what we would take to sell him off. Mitch, does this do anything in your opinion for AB's value?
Not for me at all. Like the thing that's still going on is he still has that civil suit for sex assault still going on. And it's kind of the NFL's version of being like, yeah, you're suspended for 8 games. As long as the civil suit doesn't, have anything come out in the first 9 weeks of the season, then you can maybe come back. But if anything comes back with that, then he's just going to be suspended for longer. So right now, we actually had 2 Drink on our podcast this past Monday, and he made a really good point that made me think about it a little bit. Even though I don't value him very highly right now, once we get to week 6, week 7, week 8, and we start seeing some people miss for COVID or just normal injuries, his price is going to slowly go up because we have to assume he's going to sign at some point with some team this preseason. So if that happens, we're going to slowly see that price creep up, and that's when I would sell him. Like, I wouldn't want him on my team week 9, but if you could get a little bit of a price increase between, right before he gets on the field, then I'd be all about it. Kind of like the Kareem Hunt situation from last year.
Or the AB situation last year.
Exactly, yep.
A little bit of a recurring theme. And actually, Mitch, I did catch your latest episode with 2 Drink. I was watching it on YouTube. By the way, shameless plug, if you're not subscribed to the Dynasty Theory YouTube channel, you should do that. Click the bell so you know when they go live because they have great guests on. They do a great job. It's an awesome show to watch. And shameless plug out of the way. 2 Drink actually got me thinking, and I want to give an opposing point of view here, and I want to see what you guys think. I'm wondering if this year it will be a lot harder for AB to get a job because, as you guys said, he does have to be signed at the beginning of the season. Then he has to start his 8-game suspension. Do teams want to lock themselves into that with the unknown of COVID? What if a bunch of wide receivers get COVID and they have to sign somebody? Well, now they have AB. And I guess maybe the counter argument to that is AB is probably not going to sign for a lot of money. So if you need to cut him, you can cut him. But I'm just wondering if a team, knowing that they're going to have to sit on him for 8 weeks, are going to be willing to take that chance, knowing that they could need the roster spot because multiple people on their team get COVID. Just a thought.
Yeah, I mean, possibly, I guess. I mean, I'm thinking that it is probably more likely that a team who just has a ton of salary cap available, because they lost a COVID guy, they might do that. Just so, I mean, I don't know how the math works out, timing wise, like, is a trade deadline before or after week 8? Maybe they could even move him, just as a piece, because they know, okay, well, we weathered the suspension, so now we can move him to another team and get some sort of future asset. That's something I could maybe see somebody doing, but you would have to be comfortable that he was only going to be on an 8-game suspension. Otherwise, I guess a team could still trade for him even though he was suspended.
Right.
Maybe that's a way to play it. I don't know. I'm not sure. Like, I think they have a ton of cap space, and that's somebody who will do it. But as for like, would it scare them away just having that roster spot? Does that stay used? Like, can you only address 52 men?
No, if he's suspended, then he kind of doesn't count against that 53. Whatever the cap is this year, I think it might actually be 57 with the whole COVID thing. I'm not
right.
Sure. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so he doesn't count against that. But the one thing I could definitely see, like Josh brought up, is it's going to be an incentive-laden deal. No one's going to sign him to like, here's $5 million guaranteed. It's going to be, here's veterans minimum, and you could earn the extra $5 million if you do something those last 8 weeks. That's how I could see that happening.
For sure.
A bunch of non-crazy clauses in that contract.
Exactly.
To protect themselves. But yeah, a little AB talk there. And now we'll move on. Listen, guys, the XFL has new ownership. And I brought this up just because it actually seemed like the XFL was moving in a direction to possibly be a springtime football league. We had the AAF, and everyone has come out and said they never had enough money to really keep the thing running. It looked like Vince McMahon had a plan to keep that thing financially viable for at least 3 to 5 years, and then COVID happened and he abandoned ship. Mm-hmm. The Rock and a Capital Group have bought the XFL. I think The Rock has put in $15 million of his own money, which, if you know The Rock's net worth, is, I think, what he found in the couch cushion when he got that call. But what do you think about this, especially since I think I heard there's 35 guys who were in the XFL during the season that are now on an NFL roster? Is this a good thing, a bad thing, a meh thing? What do you think, Bill?
I think they're purchasing a name, pretty much, a brand. I'm not sure that they even have plans to start the league up again. I don't know. I mean, I haven't really done too much research on that, but like, excuse me, for the price, I mean, if he paid 15 and the other guy paid 15, or something like that, then like, I just see it as a purchase of a brand for the future. Like if and when they decide to, take it over or do it again. But, maybe there is plans. And if that's the case, then, I mean, that's fantastic. But I think it's going to take some time, where I think the next team or the next league to start up really needs to work closely with the NFL so that they have some sort of, agreement and some sort of schedule that works and it doesn't compete with each other. And, so that they're in tandem. Maybe that's the new college football. You know what I mean? Because college football's played minor leagues for NFL for so long, and now these kids are starting to want to get paid, which they should. Then maybe the XFL is that next step. So I mean, I think it's just an investment in a name, and hope that it appreciates in the future.
I completely agree with Bill. I think they bought the name, and there's no plan to have a season next year or the year after. They're going to see if they can get some, more money thrown into the league. Maybe, The Rock knows people. Maybe he gets Mark Cuban to throw another $15 million in, and then they could actually have it become financially stable. But right now, $15 million, or even if they spent $30 million, that's not enough to run a league. So they would have to spend a lot more money than that. So I could see it, just like Bill said, they bought the name, and hopefully they'll build it up in the future, but I don't see it coming back in the next couple of years. I would love for it to. Spring football is amazing. Like, it was fun to watch, but I just don't see it happening right now.
And Bill, you brought up a great point, because I was actually having this conversation with my wife's stepbrother, and we were talking about, I said the same exact thing. I said, really, for the XFL or any kind of springtime football to be viable, I think they need to sit down with Roger Goodell and pretty much have an agreement like, hey, like, we're a feeder league for you. Like, maybe, a bunch of UDFAs that don't make a roster can come on down. Maybe we'll grab some college kids who either don't want to spend 3 years, working for nothing and having to pretend to go to class, and instead of making, $500,000 a year or even $150,000 a year for those 3 years, and come on down, work with NFL type coaching staffs and facilities and stuff like that. I think, I don't know what or when the XFL will come back, but I think with The Rock's connections, and I'm sure this firm that he's working with, I'm sure they have all kinds of connections in sports and music and all that kind of stuff. And if they can leverage it to make it, a league, that at least is playing some decent looking football and can throw prospects into the NFL, with the NFL's blessing, I think it could be something. So we got that. And, as we were talking about the deadline as our last bit of news for opt-outs is going to be 4 p.m. tomorrow. So I'm sure all of us will be watching ESPN, CBS, NBC, whatever our sports platform of choice is, watching that ticker to see if a big name drops out. It looks like the biggest name, at least for fantasy purposes, has been Damian Williams so far. There was talk that, OBJ wasn't happy, but it seems like that report was kind of taken before he had seen what all of the Browns' health precautions were. And once he got there, he saw what they were doing. He was really happy with it and is now saying that he's on board to play. So we won't get an OBJ outage.
I saw I think it was a member of the media for the Bucks. She posted a ID card that has like a tracking device in it. Mm-hmm. And, so it would beep to let you know if you were within like a, compromised distance from someone else. And, I think that's pretty interesting. And just even seeing that and such a minor thing, and that's all throughout the NFL. It's not just the Bucks, I guess. Like, the fact that they have something like that makes me feel a lot more comfortable that something is the season's going to go longer than, maybe I believed before that. Like, I feel like, okay, they're investing in stuff to do something that I haven't seen in any other league. Like, nobody's ever mentioned anything like that. And it was pretty interesting to me. So just that alone, I think I'm a little bit more comfortable about it. And, I'm interested to see all the stuff that the NFL is going to do to keep the season going.
Yeah, Bill, and I want to piggyback off your point because, I don't know if you guys heard, the Saints have bought a hotel in order to kind of have their own bubble, keep their players there, limit interactions with outside people. And I think on top of what the NFL is doing with those ID cards and things like that, I think you're going to see a lot of teams in the NFL follow the Saints lead, whether it's getting a hotel or, I always have, said to friends of mine, I don't know why these teams don't kind of put these players under the Des Bryant treatment. I don't know if you guys remember back in the day, Jerry had 2 or 3 guys that would follow Dez everywhere pretty much and make sure that he didn't go to the club and get in trouble and make sure that, he didn't start a fight with, this one or that one. And, I'm actually surprised you haven't heard of more teams just kind of hiring security agencies to just say, follow these guys, keep them out of the club, no chicken wings, no going to the casino, and just make sure that they're, going from the facility from home to the facility and really not make stops in between. So, I think we will see teams follow the Saints and the Bucks lead when it comes to this.
The Saints, that's brilliant because what you do is, because it's not mandatory for everyone to stay in the hotel, but what they're going to do is they're going to have the vet stay there. The really profile guys are going to stay, and then it's going to be like, well, look, Drew Brees is staying in the hotel. Why aren't you? And just that factor is going to get other guys to buy in. And I just think, as far as we like to compare it to baseball a lot, right? Because it's the other sport that's not in the bubble. But we have to remember that baseball contracts are completely guaranteed. I mean, football contracts are not. And I don't know the specific rules that the NFL has, but they have rules written to where if you get caught, go into a casino like those baseball players did when they went to San Francisco, like they could pretty much cut the player at that point and put him on some, it's not injured reserve, but whatever COVID list it is, they can move them off there and then they don't get paid. So I think the NFL players are going to be, not more accountable. I don't know what the proper word is for it, but I think they're going to do a really good job. And I'm not as worried for the season as I think a lot of people are.
Yeah, I'm with you, Mitch. I've said since the beginning, it's all about the money for the NFL. There's way too much money to be lost either not having a season at all or shortening a season. So it will be, it will be interesting to see what other measures different teams take in order to make sure that their players are staying as healthy as they possibly can, and to, and a byproduct, keep the season going for as long as possible. So, guys, I think we crushed the news. I think we did a pretty damn good job. So we're gonna move on to the timeline now. So, we saw a lot of stuff. I mean, it's a fun time of year now. We've kind of worked through the summer months, especially this summer where there's not, rookie mini camps and regular mini camps to get little glimpses and pictures and coach speak. A lot of that stuff has been to the minimum. And now that things are really ramping up, we're getting there. We're getting some news, people's opinions. So it's a fun time to be on the timeline. So this first one comes from Jared D. Ricadonna at Rico with 2 C's _3733. Fact: Evan Ingram is the new Jordan Reed. All talent, too many injuries. So, we're talking about our boy, Jordan Reed. He's in San Francisco now. Is Evan Ingram the new Jordan Reed? Mitch, we'll start with you.
No, because it's the concussions, and Jordan Reed has had so many other injuries, and Evan Ingram he's been injured too, but I don't think it's not the same situation to where we can see Jordan Reed never playing another game, and I don't think that's anything we've ever had to worry about Evan Ingram moving forward. So to me, he is the tight end 4. He is the guy that he's right under Kelsey, Kittle, and Andrews. He's the next guy on the list, but he's also that guy that I will never have on my teams because I'm never willing to pay that price for him, even though I value him there. If I have him on my team, like I'm not trading him for Zach Ertz. I'm not trading him for anyone under those 3, but I'm also not willing to go and acquire him at all.
What about you, Bill? Is Evan Ingram the new Jordan Reed?
I mean, he's on the same path. Like, because Jordan Reed, a lot of his issues early on were actually like toe injury and like ankle injuries, from what I recall. And so, like, I mean, that, is he going to be there, end up there? I have no idea. But, it's got to be concerned when every year there's issues. And I mean, exactly what Mitch is saying. Like, I'm kind of in that same situation. Like, his talent is incredible. And like when he plays, if you look at it, like even his average points per game, I mean, it's up there with the other guys. It's just, you can't rely on it. And I mean, I don't want to spend that capital on a guy that there's maybe an added touch of risk compared to other guys I can get for that same amount. So yeah, I mean, I literally have him on 0 of 20 some teams, and I don't necessarily know that I'm not looking to add him. I mean, if he gets hurt this year and I can buy him super cheap, maybe, but like once he has a good season, his value is going to be stupid high. So it's just like one of those things. Like, I probably will never have him on a roster unless I get him in a startup later.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with both you guys. Is he the next Jordan Reed? I don't think he is. But Bill did make a good point. He's kind of slowly going down that path. I don't know if he's just unlucky, if the medical staff in New York is not good. I don't know what it is, but it seems that he can't play the full 16 for one reason or another. Mitch is higher on Evan Ingram than I am. I still have Ertz in at 4, but he ends up being in that group of like Hunter Henry and those guys that are like, yeah, like we've seen them be good, but it's injuries or it's, there's some kind of young guys, but this. And all of those tight ends scare the hell out of me. I'm with you guys. I never get them because I go, yeah, I kind of see. I mean, even last year, OJ Howard was being lumped in with those guys, and it was like, oh, if they just throw him a ball, he's really good. They're good, but guys. And this year in startups, I've actually just been using the shotgun approach and just going towards the end of the draft and just picking up 5 guys that could blow up. Give me, an Ian Thomas or a Jonnu Smith or a Gerald Everett. I'll just kind of collect those guys and then hopefully one of them blow up and I know who my tight end is. But yeah, I won't end up with Evan Ingram on any of my teams either.
Just to kind of follow up what you were saying, where you have him in that group with Hunter Henry and everything, like, yeah, I mean, I probably on how I feel about him, I agree, but his upside is so much higher than those guys, in my opinion. So if I were gonna like roll the dice on somebody, it would probably be him out of that group. But yeah, I mean, Ertz and him are probably, it's just a matter of your risk. Are you more you want to take the known quantity, the guy that is going to put up a certain amount of points each year and have this many catches and not many touchdowns, or do you want the guy who is just a freak that could end up taking that jump to be, up in that top 3 level, but you have a lot more concerns about his health.
This is the reason why I want Kelsey, Kittle, or Andrews in every single league, because you just don't have to worry about it. You don't have to talk yourself into anything. You don't have to worry about Zach Ertz getting older or Goddard not getting the play once Zach Ertz goes. You don't have to worry about the injuries that Ingram has. You have those guys. You play them every week, every matchup, and you don't worry. That's what every single league, I'm willing to pay their price to acquire them.
Yeah, and agreed. I mean, if you get one of the top 3, if you're in a 12-team league, you have an advantage over 9 other teams because the only teams you're worried about are the 2 teams that have the other 2 guys. Everyone else, even if you're lining up Mark Andrews against Evan Ingram, you're going, is that Evan Ingram playing this week?
Exactly.
Is there a Q next to his name and what is it for? And that guy has to worry about that while you're just throwing Mark Andrews out there or Kittle or Kelsey and just going, yeah, they're going to get me a whole bunch of points, and I'm going to be smiling at the end of the day when it comes to my tight end position. And Bill, you're right. I agree with you. I think that Evan Ingram has the highest upside. I just kind of group them with those guys that are just like, they're really good, and then you can fill in the blank, whether it's Ingram and Henry, which are the injury concerns last year. OJ Howard was, no one ever throws him the ball, and there's kind of that group of guys in those mid rounds that you're looking at and going, all right, I could get this guy and he could be good. I agree with you. Out of that grouping of guys, Evan Ingram is by far the highest upside play. So if you're going to dive into that pool, you might as well get yourself some Evan Ingram and hope for the best. And this is very similar conversation that we always have when we're talking about Darius Geis. It's the same thing. We know he's good. No, I don't think anyone ever argues talent when it comes to these type of players. We just, as Bill always says, are you ready for that risk? What is your risk tolerance? And, a guy like me, everybody knows I don't have the tolerance for it. I have a soft stomach when it comes to that. So I usually don't go for those guys. But Jared, I hope that helps you out. Hope you have a little Evan Ingram to Jordan Reed Colery going on. Colery. Oh, I can't say the word. Forget. I'm moving on. This next one is from a really cool guy, Dino MC at Dino MC.
I've heard of him before.
I think I love the guy personally.
Yeah. He's a great follow on Twitter. He says lots of funny things. Yeah,
follow him. There's going to be a tweet going out later. You'll see it in lights. Follow that guy. So there's a rankings list here of rookies. So going to read through this real fast from 1st to 12th. CH at 101, Jonathan Taylor at 102, J.K. Dobbins at 103, Tua Tagovailoa at 104, Joe Burrow at 105, DeAndre Swift at 106, Keyshawn Vaughn at 107, Justin Herbert at 108, Rager at 109, CeeDee Lamb at 110, Justin Jefferson at 111, and Cam Akers at 112. So you said, Mitch, that you still feel really good about your rookie Superflex rankings from May. So, looking at the list, Bill wrote this down, and I'm going to back him up here. You seem to be lower on CeeDee Lamb than a lot of people. Is it due to the competition for targets? Is there anything that you would want to change with the information that you have now?
Really, the only thing I would want to change with it is I have Vaughn above Herbert, Rager, Lamb, and Jefferson. And I would drop him next to Akers at this point. That was when I make my rankings, I'm basing it off what I think their trade value can be in the future. Which one is going to see the most trade value? That's why I have the 3 running backs above the quarterbacks. And when I'm looking at the wide receivers, the only wide receiver I have above Lamb is Jalen Rager. And the reason why I have him above him is because I think he has a legit chance to be a fantasy starter every single week. You could go and you could lock him in for a 20% target share at this point, and that might be on the low end because Jeffrey's going to be on the pup. Deshaun Jackson hasn't played, a full 16-game season in 10 years at this point. I can't remember how long it was. And there's no one else on the team unless you are really worried about Greg Ward taking over, a round 1 wide receiver. And I just don't see that happening. And so I have Rager above him, then CeeDee Lamb. I love his talent, but Michael Gallup is really, really good. And Amari Cooper's not going anywhere for 2 more years. So you're hoping at best CeeDee Lamb can maybe go over Gallup and be the second guy on that league on that team as far as targets go. But I think there's a much stronger of a chance that it's Cooper, then Gallup, and then CeeDee Lamb in the slot. And you're hoping for 80 targets a year. And so I don't see Lamb's value jumping up that high, where I could see someone like Rager can have an A.J. Brown type of year, and then all of a sudden he's going in the second round of startups next year. So that's the reason why I have Rager above him, and I wouldn't change it for a second.
So what do you think about this explanation that Mitch gave us about his hatred for CeeDee Lamb?
That makes sense. I mean, you're basing it off of, value in the near future. I get that. So yeah, I mean, I can appreciate that. That makes a lot of sense. And dropping Keyshawn Vaughn, I think that's a definite. I think just things have kind of changed a little bit. The news has changed a little bit. There's just a little bit less certainty that he's going to be the guy. So like, I can appreciate dropping him a little bit. So it makes sense. The running backs are obviously typically always going to be higher, especially the elite ones. So I think those 4 for sure. And then the 3 quarterbacks. So there you go. So basically CeeDee Lamb would be 109 now. So yeah, I mean, that's what he was pretty much going 8 or 9, 7, 8, 9 in the drafts. So I dig it.
Mitch, I'm listening to your Jalen Rager love, and I can't believe that you didn't mention Quez Watkins during your breakdown of the star-studded Philadelphia Eagle wide receiver room. But listen, I'm a Cowboys fan who lives in Philadelphia, so I mean, I've heard all of the Jalen Rager love after there was a lot of Jalen Rager hate because everyone wanted Justin Jefferson. So there's been a complete 180 done on who Jalen Rager is and what he can accomplish in Philadelphia. But I see what you're saying, because I've actually said to a lot of people, I think that CeeDee Lamb for 2020, and this is going to be such a crazy year, so who knows if this is right or wrong.
Yeah.
It is going to be a souped up Randall Cobb. And what I mean by that is Randall Cobb ended up with 800 and something yards and a handful of touchdowns. And I think you might be able to get about the same yardage and maybe another touchdown or two from CeeDee Lamb. But yeah, I mean, Amari Cooper is a shoo-in for 1,000 yards, even if, all 1,000 come in about 4 games. And Michael Gallup was step for step with Amari Cooper last year in yardage and touchdowns. So he's no joke. I think where you're going to see the big bump in value for Lamb is after the 2021 season, where the Cowboys probably let Amari go and, either promote Lamb to that number 1 spot or promote Gallup to that number 1 spot and have, Lamb kind of do what Gallup has been doing. So, yeah, I'm with you. The value's not good right now. And maybe if you have kind of the faith that I do that CeeDee Lamb in a couple of years will be that guy, maybe it's a buy low opportunity for you.
Could you argue the opposite and to move Akers up and keep Keyshawn Vaughn where he is because of this COVID season and the concern for wide receivers? And are they going to be able to contribute like they normally would because, just of the potential, the lack of the preseason games and that sort of thing? Like, it's going to be crazy. Like, I would completely rather rely on a rookie running back than a rookie wide receiver. I mean, of course, long term, I don't think that Keyshawn Vaughn is in that same level. But, like, if we're just looking at, like, at the end of 2020, who's going to have the most value? I mean, I think you could argue that it's going to be the top, it's the quarterbacks and the running backs before any wide receiver. Like, I mean, I could see somebody argue that, I guess.
Yeah, my biggest worry with Cam Akers is that offensive line is terrible, and it's not going to be good for years, especially with the salary cap reduction we're going to have next year. The Rams can't go get anybody, and they still have to sign Jalen Ramsey. They're not going to have salary cap, and so I don't see that line getting better. Jared Goff isn't, he's not a world beater. He's just the average quarterback out there, and I just don't want any part of that backfield. I mean, you could have put, if Jonathan Taylor went to the Rams, I wouldn't have Jonathan Taylor at 105. He would be really low for me as well. Because the fact is that offensive line is horribly bad. And when Gurley was really good, they had the best line in the league. Then all of a sudden the line gets bad and, Gurley has his health issues, but everyone looks bad behind that line. So I could see moving Akers up, but I just have no faith in that offense anymore, outside of Woods and Kupp. That's the only guys that I really like. But Josh, I was going to ask you real quick. So we're going through our projections, right? And you look at the 3 Cowboys wide receivers.
Mm-hmm.
We have to assume they're all going to be really close to 1,000 yards. Blake Jarwin could easily outperform what Wynn did last year. Do you worry about Ezekiel Elliott's upside? Because what happens if he doesn't get those 70 targets? What happens if he drops down to 50 targets now? And now is he still locked in as that running back 3, or could that drop him down below Dalvin Cook and CEH at this point?
So that's a really good question, and I think that question has a lot of different parts to it. So the first part is that I was really high on Jarwin going into the offseason, but with the moves that have been made by the Cowboys, most importantly, bringing in CeeDee Lamb as a first-round pick, I'm actually lower now on Jarwin than a lot of people are. I think he's going to be the one that suffers the most because I do think that they're going to try to prove, even though everyone, gave them a lot of praise for the pick, they're going to try to prove that CeeDee Lamb is a number 1 type guy and that they're running 3 number 1 type guys out there. And I think Jarwin suffers. But Ezekiel Elliott is going to suffer too. I mean, he's not going to get as many receptions as probably maybe anyone else that you're drafting as a first round, startup pick. But he's so elite on the ground that he kind of makes up for it. Because even if we remember his first couple years, I mean, he wasn't getting a ton of receptions. He wasn't even getting a ton of targets. And he just stayed in that top 3 territory because he churned on the ground. I mean, his rookie season, he was challenging Eric Dickerson's, rushing record, his rookie year. And that's the type of guy he is. And I don't think that part of his game is going to fall off too much. So I actually saw someone on Twitter say that they could see an argument of putting CEH at 103 over Zeke. And I said, I don't see that argument, because unless you're telling me that CEH is going to have CMC type reception numbers, Zeke is just too elite on the ground. And on top of that, the guy never gets hurt. Now, of course, this year is going to be weird. He's already had COVID, so who knows? But if he plays a full 16, which he's done every year except for the 1 year he got suspended, I mean, I don't see him really falling out of that top 3, even with a reduction in receptions. So that's
perfect. Thanks. Sorry to get us off track a little bit there, but I like getting other takes. I asked the co-host Dan, and it's Cowboy fan. I can't, take anything he says.
I would think that it's all based on, the game scripts. If you think they're going to be a better team, I think Zeke's going to be in the same, he's going to be getting the volume still, but it's if they're going to be worse, then you're going to see less of him. So it's just what's the win totals from Vegas? Any idea?
No, I'd guess it'd have to be at least 9.
Yeah,
just guessing off the top of my head.
I think it's 9.
Yeah.
And actually, Bill, you bring up a really good point, and I don't think it goes so much to record, but I think that defense is much worse off than it was last year. They lost Byron Jones in free agency. They lost a couple other guys. I think they're going to be in shootouts. I think those games are going to be close. I don't think anyone's going to come in and blow them out. So I think in those situations, especially towards the end of games, if they're holding on to a 2 or 3 point lead, it's Zeke time. We're running it, and you know what we're doing, and you got to try to stop us if you can. And I mean, that has blown up in the Cowboys' face sometimes. I've seen it. It hasn't always worked out, but a lot of times it does work out with Zeke just crushing the ball behind a slightly weaker offensive line, but still probably one of the top 5 to 7 offensive lines in the league. So, that's a really good point, Bill. I think that defense is worse, but I think that's going to just lead to a lot of close games still, a lot of shootouts. So we got this next one from our brother in arms, our DAP Network brethren, Har at Brian Har FF. CH at 105 is insanity. So to give you context there, Ryan McDowell put out a tweet from DLF, the DLF ADP, and Clyde Edwards-Helaire was going in at 105. The only people in front of him were McCaffrey, Barkley, Kamara, and Elliott. And then behind him, Michael Thomas, Dalvin Cook, Mixon, Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill, Nick Chubb, and Josh Jacobs. So he said he goes from being the 3rd or 4th best running back prospect in the 2020 class to a generational talent based on being drafted by Kansas City and the Damian Williams opt-out. It's just nuts. So can anyone give me an explanation, because I side with Har here, on why drafting him at 105 in a startup now is a good idea?
So I actually disagree. I actually think it's a good idea to draft him at 105. The only person, so I'm not a dynasty owner who's going to take Michael Thomas or Devontae Adams or any wide receiver in the first round. I'm going to grab a running back, or, if it's super flex, I'll grab Mahomes or Lamar. But besides that, if I was to trade Clyde Edwards-Helaire today, I wouldn't trade him straight up for Dalvin Cook, because although Har calls him, Kim going at 105 would be a generational talent. Dalvin Cook isn't a generational talent. He's had one good year, and he was still injured during that year. Look behind him, Kamara. I mean, all right. I could even see a case for taking Edwards-Helaire over Kamara. Kamara is 25 at this point. And so if you just look at the role that he's in, and I think the value that you could still get out of him, I'm still all about getting CEH at this point. If I have to spend the 105 pick to get him, I'm willing to do it because I'm not willing to take anyone after him over him. I'm not going to take Joe Mixon over him. Tyreek Hill's not going to happen. Nick Chubb's not going to happen. Josh Jacobs, I mean, that's definitely not going to happen.
Bill?
Yeah, so I'm in a startup right now, and I had the 109, and it's a super flex. So there was 3 quarterbacks taken before me, or including it was the big 2, and then Watson, and then it was the 4 guys before CEH here, and then Michael Thomas was taken right before me, so 1-8, and it's like. Yeah, I get the Michael Thomas, but I'm not, you're buying him at his ultimate peak. I'm kind of the same boat with Mitch. I'm not going to draft a wide receiver in the first round. There's just so many wide receivers, and I'm not going to get a guy that I feel will not even be close to what he did last year. So it got to that point, and I'm just like, who do I take? Like, there's nobody at that point that I feel like super stoked to take. So do I want to take Dalvin, who's had health issues and who's, going on a second contract? Do I take Mixon, who has never been higher than late RB2? There's all these guys that all have question marks, and it's very easy to see their value drop quickly. And so the option is, do you go for the elite tight end there? Do you go for CEH? Do you go for, a younger player like that? And so I can't fault anybody for taking him that early because at that point, I don't think that there's anybody that is, if you're going running back in particular, that I would rather have. Like I can see arguments, but there's no obvious answer. That you go, oh, well, this guy's obviously better than CEH, or he's in a better situation, or he's a guy that I know I'm going to have 4 years with CEH. So, it's hype. There's no question it's hype. But at the same time, give me the obvious answer if it's not him.
Yeah, and you and Mitch brought up some really good points. Here's where I stand on it. JT was my number 1 throughout the process, and Swift was my number 2. Now, as we got a lot closer to the draft, I moved CEH up just because I pretty much knew that CEH was, there was a lot of rumors coming out that Andy Reid and the coaching staff and the front office loved CEH, and if he was there, they were going to take him. So, and I didn't think anyone else was going to grab CEH before 32. But I agree. If I'm in the spot and I can't trade out, this is why I love trading out of the first round of startups, because I don't have to worry about, hey, do I take CEH? Do I take Dalvin Cook? Do I take Michael Thomas? Which I agree with you are all options that I'm not really super hype on doing. I guess if I'm forced, if no one is, willing to trade into that spot, I guess CEH is the guy, just because I think that at least for the rest of this year, barring an injury or something like that, you're going to be able to get a lot of return on that, especially if he goes out week 1. I don't even know who they're playing. And he has, 10 rushes for 60 yards and 8 receptions for, 85 and a touchdown. People are going to be running all over the place. Shane, I was talking to Bill about this. Shane Manila, I'm in the Dynasty Trades HQ OG Listener League. and he sent me an offer of CEH and a 3rd-round pick. Now, I'll preface this by saying this is a 16-team Superflex league. So CEH and a 3rd-round pick for Devontae Adams and a 1st-round pick. And I didn't even counter him. I rejected the trade, and I wrote in the box. I said, Shane, for what it would take you to get Devontae Adams and a 1st-round pick off of me, you won't do the deal. Like I know you, Shane. We've had negotiations. We've made trades before. I would need like CEH. He has Miles Sanders, who we'll talk about later. A 2nd in 2021, a 2nd in 2022, and probably, some fairy dust in order to get Devontae Adams and a 1st-round pick off of me. So I didn't even want to send him the counter because I knew it would be an immediate reject. But this is the time. If maybe you're like me, you weren't 100% sold on CEH and you got him, this is the time to sell because, I mean, I think people are giving away naming rights to their kids in order to get them. And, if you're a fan, if you're like Mitch, who had him, 101 in May as a rookie, this is your shot, because if he balls out week 1, if you think the prices are high now, they're going to skyrocket after that point.
Yeah, if he ends up being running back 7 on the year, running back 10 on the year, he's going to be a top 5 pick for the foreseeable future at that point. And that's easily in his range of outcomes. And that's all I'm looking at is if, I'm not looking at a ceiling. I'm just looking at, can he hit that part? And if he can, then I'm all about that price.
Yeah. And I mean, even if he kind of goes on that Damian Williams pace of the last, 8 games of 2018, you're probably right, Mitch. Top 5 is going to be his floor.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be shocked if, he leapfrogs Kamara, maybe even leapfrogs Elliott, and he's, a top 3 guy. And that's, that's not even talking about, what if Barkley gets injured again? What if, Ja Rule decides that Christian McCaffrey shouldn't get 1,000 touches a game and actually pulls back on him a little bit? There's a lot of ways you can easily explain it. So while it won't be something I'm doing, you guys have kind of showed me at least why it's happening, even if it's something that I choose not to do.
Yeah, sorry, just really quick to add into it. Look at Joe Mixon right now. Joe Mixon hasn't been a real running back 1 yet. I mean, he ends the season as 1, but he hasn't been one in your lineup weekly. Yep. And he's going at 108 right now. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is only going 3 picks ahead of him. And Dalvin Cook is going 2 spots behind him, and Dalvin Cook had 1 good season. He had like 13 good games is what he had. And so, I think you just kind of have to take Edwards-Helaire at that point.
Yeah, and you brought up a great point. I was going to bring up Cook as well. We haven't seen 16 out of Cook since forever, and he's still hovering in that top 5 territory. So that just shows what I shouldn't say great, but really good running backs go for it in startups. People, a lot of people, I think, Mitch, subscribe to your way of building a team through a startup. They like to go RB heavy in the beginning because you can find wide receivers everywhere throughout a startup. And, running backs get real gross real quick. When you're looking in the 5th to 8th round of a startup and you're like, ooh, okay, yeah, sure. I guess I can get a Raheem Mostert, and you choke down the throw up a little bit while you hit select. Yeah, and if CH can be in that territory, he's going to be in that 1st round for the next 3 to 5 years. So, all right, this next one is from FF Stadler at FF Stadler. Who is this year's Lamar Jackson? And don't tell me Kyler Murray. So he doesn't want to hear your Kyler Murray love. So here are the options that he gave out. Daniel Jones, Gardner Minshew, Drew Lock, and other. So, Bill, I'll let you go first since I know one of those options is already off the board for you. Who's out of those choices? Who is this year's Lamar Jackson?
I don't think there's a this year Lamar Jackson personally, but if we're talking about a guy who's gonna like really outkick his ADP, then I'm gonna go Gardner Minshew just because he's the one that has the lowest ADP, and I think he can, shoot up the most. But like, I'm not a lot guy. We all know that. So, but I think he might be the one that's most likely. Just because of the players around him, I'm not taking the risk on him because if it doesn't work out, he's valueless. And so but if we were going to say who's the guy that has the best opportunity, I would say it's him. But I almost might argue that it's Minshew just because their defense is getting worse and worse every year. And he's going to just have to throw the ball. So, I mean, I could see him sneak into like a back end QB1 or something like that, if things went right. But I don't think there's anybody that's all of a sudden going to launch themselves up to like a top 3 QB that's outside of the top 6 QBs right now.
Mitch, what about you? Who do you got in this situation?
It's definitely not Drew Lock. I mean, all of his skill positions got worse when he started last year, so he's definitely not going to be the guy for me. I would love to say Gardner Minshew because he's my hero. He's everything I want to be when I grow up. But the problem is the Jags could end up being one of the top picks in the draft next year. And if Lawrence is sitting there or Fields is sitting there, you would have to assume the Jags are going to go with them over Minshew, even though I actually think he's still going to have a good year, even if they are bad. But my guy this whole offseason has been Daniel Jones. If you look at the skill positions around him, he has Barkley, he has Ingram. The wide receivers are fine with Slayton and Shepard. Offensive line is decent, but he also plays in that NFC East. And like Josh, like you brought up, there's going to be a lot of shootouts in that division. And he was the only guy besides Lamar Jackson who had multiple overall quarterback 1 weeks last season because he had like 3 or 4 games with 4 or more touchdowns. I can't remember how many it was, but he's the guy. So what's the one thing that we hear on Twitter all the time? We want draft equity. That is what matters. And although everybody hated Daniel Jones going into last year's draft, he has the draft equity. And he didn't even play a lot of games last year. I think he only played 10 or 11 games. He was really good fantasy-wise. He had a ton of fumbles, but that really doesn't kill us in fantasy. So if there's one guy who has all of the talent around him, and if he could just keep pace with the other guys, I think he could end up being a first-round pick next year.
So, man, you guys really hate Drew Lock. I mean,
yes,
poor guy. He's out there just
tell me what he's done so far that makes him good.
He lip synced on the sidelines. That's all that matters. He has the one gift to where he lip syncs some rap song and shoots him up the draft boards.
So here's my thing about Drew Lock. I am not I'm not Stompy. I'm not going to tell you that he's this year's QB1. I'm not going that far with Drew Lock. I'm waiting to give my opinion on Drew Lock because as average as he looked, it was only 5 games. I mean, we have to sit here and realize he was injured at the beginning of the season. Denver just threw him out there to see what they had. He had some glimpses of brilliance. He had a lot more glimpses of just looking like crap. And
they went 4-1. That's the other thing. I'm sorry for interrupting you.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, they went 4-1, so everybody thinks, that's something that people run with as well.
I unfortunately, my whole thing during the offseason is I want to see him with a full offseason. Obviously they brought in a lot of guys to help him out. Jerry Jeudy was drafted. Melvin Gordon was brought in via free agency. They seemed like they were trying to build an offense around him. I don't want to say that I'm not going to say that Drew Lock sucks because he only played 5 games. I'm also not going to say he's QB1. I'm kind of, hey, let's see
the point, though.
Let's see him play more than 5 games before we anoint him as a QB1 or we anoint him as a guy who can't play. Now, what's working against him is that John Elway decided to draft him. And as we know, all of those guys, are not doing.
But he's not Lamar Jackson. I mean, I think we could just go there.
Yeah, he's not Lamar Jackson. He doesn't have the legs to be Lamar Jackson. And I think that's where, I mean, he did increase all of his stats in the passing game, but what makes Lamar Jackson is the fact that dude runs like a running back, and nobody in the league can do that. So go ahead, Bill.
So, okay, you saying that you can't make a judgment essentially means you agree with us. Because if you agree, that means you're not going to make a move to go acquire him right now because you don't know if he's good or bad, and do you want to spend what it's going to cost you to buy him right now? And that's where the conversation is, and that's exactly my opinion. I have no idea how he is, but he hasn't shown me anything. Like what the team's done, all that. Yes, they're building an offense, but are they building an offense around him, or are they building the offense for the next quarterback they bring in? We don't know. Like if he blows up, and that's kind of what I'm saying is, like, I agree. I have no idea if he's good or bad, but there's no way I'm paying the prices that it's going to cost me to get him with such a small window and poor showing. That's kind of my point. And it's not that I hate Drew Lock. It's just that I hate the hype of Drew Lock.
So it's funny because I think we can connect this to our previous segment. We're doing the same thing with CEH. We have anointed him. That dude has not even stepped onto an NFL field. And before the 2019/2020 college football season, nobody was talking about Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He was on LSU. They were the best team in the history of college football. I have no issue saying that. I do think he's talented, but he's gone from, top 3 or 4 pick in rookie drafts to the number 1 pick to now top 5 overall startup pick. And we haven't seen that dude do anything. And I agree with you. I am not going out and trying to buy Drew Lock because Drew Lock's prices are inflated due to the hype train. It's the same thing with me and CEH. I'm not going to try to acquire him because the prices are inflated due to the hype train. Now, I did take him Superflex Army 2 that you and I are in, Bill. He's my QB2 in a Superflex. I mean, look, I could shoot craps, and like you guys are saying, he's toast, and Denver is, who knows, maybe they're in a top 5 position and they're taking Lawrence or Fields to throw to all the stallions they have running out there. But I'm just kind of looking at it like there's a lot of Drew Lock hate, which is funny because this is not where this question this is not even close to what this question asked. But there's a lot of Drew Lock hate, and I just don't know how we can hate a guy after playing 5 games. That's just my point.
I think you're building a narrative that's not there, though. There isn't a hate per se. It's just the hype. And it's like there might be a little maybe a little hate. But like it's just I think that like the difference also is that in a running back can contribute easier than a running back can contribute easier than a quarterback. And the team that the running back on has historical, there's history to show like that running backs succeed in that offense. Has there been any quarterbacks that have succeeded in this offense? Like, and it's a new offense, so we got to plug that in too. So maybe like we don't really know, but like even for this team, is there the data of a quarterback succeeding in the last 20 years? I mean, aside from one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time succeeding, there hasn't been. So, like, that's the information that we have, and so I'm a little bit more comfortable doing CEH. I'm not getting either of them. I didn't draft CEH when I had the opportunity, but like my point being is like I am way more comfortable drafting CEH than I am. I mean, of course, price dependent, but like the hype on Lock is just crazy to me. Like, we have other data, like, and when you said he's the third or fourth running back, that's from dynasty analysts and people like that. Like, the NFL told us who was the running back one, and that was the guy who was drafted first, who is the guy we're discussing with CEH. So the third or fourth was us on Twitter hearing the third or fourth running back. So a lot of times we can kind of build narratives, and I mean, we're all guilty of it. Like, I am 100% guilty of it. So I just think that there's probably less hate than is. It's just that I'm not going to spend that capital for him. Mitch, I'm sure you'll say you hate him.
So the one thing with Drew Lock, and we're bringing up where they were drafted, there is a quarterback premium in the NFL for quarterbacks, right? He was a second-round quarterback, but he wasn't a second-round talent. Like, he wasn't where he was drafted. He wasn't as talented as the guys going around him. But the one thing we know for sure is there is not a running back premium in the NFL draft. If anything, they're hindered by being running backs. So by having Clyde Edwards-Helaire going in the first round, we could go and say, oh, look, Rashad Penny hasn't turned out and stuff like that. But over the course, you could say first round running backs are really good to have in fantasy. And so as much as, like, I really don't have anything against Drew Lock, it's fine. But if you just look at the offense, how they build it, though, is they have an elite defense. I think they're going to have easily a top 5 defense in the league. They have a good O-line. They have good pass catchers, but they also have a really good running back too. I could see Drew Lock just doesn't have the amount of volume that you're going to need in order to have him move above the Baker Mayfields and everyone else that's going to be before him, before he could even get him into that second or first round, even in super flex type of leagues.
Yeah, and I will say, at the price that Drew Lock seems to be going for, I won't have more than the one share that I talked about where he's my QB2. Obviously, if maybe you're in a league with Mitch and he accidentally hit Drew Lock, maybe you can snag him for a QB2 price. But I mean, that's the price that I would want to buy him for is that QB2 price, and he's not there. And Bill, you channeled JB with price dependent, and I'll channel him real quick by playing both sides of the fence here. John Elway has never drafted a quarterback that's worth a damn. However, there's a new offensive coordinator in town, and I don't know if you remember who that guy is, but he's the guy who was just coaching, the guy who should win this poll, by the way. Mitch, you're correct. It's Daniel Jones. I think Daniel Jones has the best shot of kind of catapulting from a guy who's not getting a lot of respect to a guy who could easily be one of the top 10 quarterbacks drafted in startups next year, easily. And he won this poll, by the way, 35%. Drew Lock was in second with 25%. So you guys, might be a little right. Maybe only 3/4 of the people out there hate Drew Lock. Gardner Minshew was close behind at 22%. So maybe he can guide young Lock on the way to decentness or prosperity. I don't even know, but that was a good chat. I didn't think we were going to get into a Drew Lock conversation when I threw this on there, but that was fun. It was a lot of good points thrown by both Bill and Mitch, and I'm still going to hold out hope for young Mr. Lock, but Mitch and Bill hate him. So we'll go to our wrap up here, our finale. We asked Mitch to grab a tweet and throw it on here, and he actually grabbed a real good one. So This is from Sports Radio 94 WIP, which is one of the local sports stations here in Philly. And, Deuce Staley, running back coach for the Eagles, says, you put him in and you let him go. And he's talking about the one and only Miles Sanders. A lot of people are very high on Miles Sanders, have him in that first round of startup drafts. He wasn't in that DLF breakdown that we had, but what do you guys feel about Miles Sanders? I feel like there's a very clear division between the people that have a lot of faith in him and people who are holding up the wait and see approach. Bill, we'll start with you since Mitch threw this on here. Miles Sanders, are you a yay or a nay?
I don't really buy into coach speak too much, so it's I get it. That's nice. That's nice to hear. That's he's your best running back, so I hope you're going to say something similar. I hope that the Lions say something about DeAndre Swift like that, But usage, I don't know. Maybe they do use him a lot. Maybe he's in that chunk of all those running backs. So I could see him being taken where CEH is almost, if somebody buys into it. So I think there's just this crazy tier from once you get past Kamara, that there's probably 6 or 7 running backs that if you want a running back, I couldn't fault you taking any of those 6 or 7 guys. And so, he's not my guy. I literally have 0 shares of him as well. So we're talking about a lot of guys that aren't on my team. But I think his price is just too high for me to acquire him anymore. So I get it. But it's exciting. He's definitely a dynamic guy. That he's the kind of guy that I would want over Chubb, who's maybe not quite as much of a pass catcher and that sort of thing. So he's just in that block of 6 guys, but I don't really have much opinion other than that.
Yeah, and it's funny because I think again, this is one of these things where it's obvious that Miles Sanders is super talented. He showed it once he got a chance, but the reason why he got a chance is because Jordan Howard got hurt. And a lot of people crap on Jordan Howard. So, take that for what it is. And, again, I live near Philly. I see every Eagles game because it's on every local network. Doug Peterson loves his running back by committee. We all want to say, well, Miles Sanders is the guy who's going to, blow that up. But we also said that about O.J. Howard last year. Bruce Arians has never had a tight end as talented as O.J. Howard, so that means he's going to get production. And what we learned from Bruce Arians, which is what we should have always kind of known, is that coaches like to do what they do, and they don't really, besides, your Bill Belichick's and maybe your Andy Reid's, you don't get coaches that stray away from what they do well and mix it up. So I am worried that, people like to kind of crap on Boston Scott, but look at his stats that last month of the season. He was out there and he was getting touches. He wasn't getting 20 a game or anything, but he was getting touches and he was performing. He was doing well with the touches he was given. So I think Boston role on that team. And let's face it, things are going to be weird with this season. Maybe the Bucs cut bait with LaShawn McCoy and he re-signs in his old stomping grounds, or maybe they work out a deal with Devonta Freeman for a little bit of cash and he comes there. I don't think the running back depth chart that you see right now is what it will be week 1. I think there is going to be 1 or 2 guys that you didn't expect to be there that will be there. And I think it could muck things up for Sanders. But if if this wasn't coach speak and Deuce actually just plans on putting him out there and letting him run, I agree with Bill. You're gonna have, you're gonna have a lot of production, and you're gonna be very happy with where you took him. Mitch, we'll let you wrap it up since it was your tweet.
All right, so I actually kind of agree with what both of you said, but the only thing that what Deuce Staley said kind of made me feel is I don't think they're going to go out and sign Devontae Freeman at this point. I think because if they sign Devontae Freeman, they're going to want him to come in kind of not be the guy, but be a guy. Mm-hmm. And if he's being willing to say, Miles Sanders is our guy, like I'm not going to go in and change our market share at all between him and Boston Scott. We still have Boston Scott getting, I think, like 40% of the carries, which I think is more than fair. And so I actually have him in the same tier as Mixon, Chubb, and Jacobs. I think they're all just right there together. So as far as Miles Sanders goes, that quote just gave me the confidence being like, okay, I'm confident with him being there. If he's on my teams, I'm happy. I'm willing to pay that price for him as well. But the one thing that I will constantly worry with Miles Sanders is his touchdown upside. He will definitely get it through the pass. I don't know if they're going to be giving him the ball or Boston Scott the ball when they get, the 5 to the 10-yard line. But you look at the other guys, Joe Mixon's going to get it. Nick Chubb's going to get it. And Josh Jacobs going to get it in that. And so of those guys that he's right next to, I probably have him below all of those guys, even though I'm really confident in his price now, especially with Deuce Staley saying that about him. He's still the guy to where you're going to have to worry about that upside moving forward because we really don't see him as the, guy that's going to get 20 carries within the 5-yard line every season, especially with Carson Wentz there because, he's still going to go. He's still he doesn't know how to dive. He's going to try to score every single time. So you could see Carson Wentz sniping 2 or 3 from him each year.
So, Mitch, I want to ask you a question since you did this to me earlier. So you have your projections, and with Miles Sanders, I don't know where you have the wide receivers and tight ends statted out in your projections, and I don't know if you project for injuries. Probably not, because a lot of people don't. Are you worried about Sanders receiving upside being limited with, the additions of Jalen Reagor and, they still have Ertz and Goddard there? Are you worried that his receiving upside is capped because of that?
Yeah, we definitely don't have him a lot. We only have him at 11% to where you have someone like Goddard getting 14%. So it ends up being about 50 catches over the whole course of the year, which I think is easily in his range of outcomes. That's one thing we try to do with the projections, just make sure, it's not outlandish at all. And so, that puts him really close to Josh Jacobs. And Josh Jacobs is a guy who gets no targets. We have him hardly with anything but he has that touchdown upside. We have Miles Sanders with 5 rushing touchdowns, and that might be close to a ceiling to where you can look at Josh Jacobs. 20's within a ceiling if that offense isn't terrible because no one else is getting rushing touchdowns in that offense.
And that's a really good point. I didn't even think about that. And, I mean, the way you projected it seems exactly kind of what I'm thinking that, 8 to 12% where it's not going to be a ton, but he will get enough to be viable in the passing game. So, dude, this was a great episode. We usually try to cap it around an hour. We're at an hour and 20 minutes right now, but we just had so much fun getting into CEH and Drew Lock and all these things. Real good conversation, especially because we all didn't agree on everything. And it's good to get that other side. It's good to get that other point of view because it could help you out, while crafting a trade, while, Bill is in a startup right now, if he knows, people are fading Drew Lock and, hyping up CEH, he has that information at his disposal, even if he doesn't feel the same way. So real good stuff. Mitch, appreciate you coming on, man. This was so much fun. We got to get you on again sooner rather than later, because I feel like we could go for another hour probably, but but that probably wouldn't be good for the listeners or me personally. So just let everybody know where you're at, what you're doing, how they can find you, because if they haven't found you yet, they definitely need to.
Yeah, so you can get me at DynoMC on Twitter. I'm on the Dynasty Theory podcast with my co-host John Bauer and Dan Lamondia. And, I really want to thank you guys for coming on. This is fun. We have news to talk about. The reason why it went for an hour 30 is because we're just not talking about spreadsheets anymore. We're talking about real things that are going to be happening on the football field the next month. And so, I really appreciate you guys having me on this time of year, because it's a lot better being on right now than it is in June when nothing else is going on. So really, guys, thank you.
Man, I mean, the pleasure is all ours. Bill and I have talked. We were psyched when you told us you could come on and join us, and we appreciate it. And we're also appreciative of everybody who logged on and chatted with us tonight. We had our man JB, the Bauer Club was on. KT08 was on. A lot of people coming in and out. We see who's coming in and out, and it's a lot of fun seeing you guys. Even if you didn't mention anything in the chat, we appreciate that you came on. Remember, if you're watching this on YouTube, hit that subscribe, hit that bell so you know when we're available. If you're listening to us on podcasts, we appreciate you guys too. You guys are taking an hour and 20 minutes out of your day to listen to what we have to say, and you'll never know how much that means to Bill and I. So, and remember, if you're doing that in the podcast form, subscribe, rate, review, tell a friend, tell your neighbor, go onto your mom's phone and just subscribe to it anyway. We're out here for the download, so even if mom's not listening, we'll appreciate the download. And Bill, on that note, we are out of here.
Late